Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is Wednesday, June 18th at 10:05, and we are here this morning in docket number 2022-389A. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, Chair Belser, and with us virtually we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner Caston. I'll recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Alicia Clausen, to read the docket, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and participants. We are here today for the proceeding in docket number 389, 2022-389A regarding Chapter 103, Article 7 of the South Carolina Code of State Regulations related to water utilities. All interested members of the public and the regulated community were invited to make comments on the proposed regulations at this public hearing before the Commission. The proceeding has been scheduled for today, June 28th, 2023 at 10 a.m. Madam Chair, I believe all participants in this matter are available and the docket's in order.
Thank you, Ms. Clausen. For the record, let's just take appearances from the participants. Southwest Water Company.
Madam Chair, I'm Charlie Terraney. I'm here for Southwest Water Company, and with me is Nakia Morris, who is the Customer Care Manager of the Southwest Water Companies.
Thank you, Mr. Terraney and Ms. Morris. Welcome. Blue Granite Water Company.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Lyle Traywick on behalf of Blue Granite Water Company. With me from the company today, I have Zach Payne.
Welcome, Mr. Traywick and Mr. Payne. Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Alex Knowles on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff.
Welcome, Mr. Knowles. Let me recognize our Executive Director, Ms. Jocelyn Boyd, who will be making presentations regarding the regulations this morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Madam Chair, if you are okay with me proceeding with asking to introduce certain jurisdictional documents into the record this morning.
Any objection from participants? Hearing none. Yes, ma'am. Go
Okay.
ahead.
We'll begin with Ms. Adams's assistance, Madam Chair, with distributing the notice of drafting. The document that Ms. Adams is distributing to you includes a document transmittal form with an official file date stamp of December 8th, 2022 with the South Carolina Legislative Council. And behind that, the first page, you will find the actual filing for the notice of drafting.
Ms. Boyd, do we need to mark these individually, or may the jurisdictional documents all be a composite exhibit?
I think they can be one composite exhibit,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. So first we have the notice of drafting.
All right. Next, we will proceed, Madam Chair, with the proposed regulation. Thank you. The proposed regulation, the document that Ms. Adams is distributing to you, indicates that the proposed regulation was filed on March 10th, 2023 with the South Carolina Legislative Council, and the filed documents appear behind the official filed stamped document transmittal form. Next, Madam Chair, Ms. Adams will be distributing to you two separate documents. One which is a verification, which does not include any underlined or stricken language. And the watermark on that one, which does not include any underlined language, indicates that you will receive pages 1, 2, and 3 of 4. And that appears on the, right-hand side. The other document, which just had one change that needed to be made, that document contains 2 pages, pages 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, Madam Chair. Those are the verifications. We'll proceed next, unless there are questions, with the actual copy of the.
Just a moment. Let's make sure that
Yes,
we've
ma'am.
got all the documents out.
Okay. Thank you.
simple like that.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we're proceeding with the actual copy of the notice of drafting that was published in the state register. The footer on the document Ms. Adams is distributing to you indicates that the drafting notice for the Public Service Commission's water regulations began at the bottom of page 10 and was published on December 23rd, 2022 in the state register. Thank you. Do you have that one, Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Last document is the actual proposed regulation. The last document Ms. Adams distributed, and it begins on page 22, proposed regulations, and you'll see that the footer, it says South Carolina State Register, publication date March 24th, 2023, and that includes the actual proposed regulation plus the information that's contained in the link to that proposed regulation.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm going to proceed now with the slide deck.
Is that everything?
That's everything. Those are all the jurisdictional documents.
I count 6 documents. Notice of drafting, the proposed regulation, 2 verification sheets, the notice of drafting published in the State Register December 23rd, 2022, and the proposed regulation published in the State Register on March 24th, 2023. Those will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 and received into the record of this proceeding.
Okay. Madam Chair, now Ms. Adams is going to distribute a copy of the slide deck for the presentation regarding the water utilities regulations that are before you for your consideration today.
Does this need to be a hearing exhibit or an exhibit?
I don't think so, Madam Chair. The information that's included is, well, let's make it a hearing exhibit because there is one slide where I mentioned the Office of Regulatory Staff's contact information. So if you would, please make that part of the record also.
Thank you. Marked for identification. Copies of the slide deck marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of this proceeding.
Okay. All right. We'll move from the first slide. You're familiar with this slide, and the commissioners are also familiar with our requirement to formally review the commission's regulations every 5 years. The information on the third slide, Madam Chair and Commissioners, is just what we reviewed. The only information I didn't mention was that today's hearing was published in the State Register within the substance of the proposed regulation. Slide 4 contains a list of the regulations that are before you today for your consideration. Regulation 103-702, we'll begin there. And that is the regulation that covers definitions for the water regulations. In Regulation 103-702.2, curb stop, you'll find where the word his is struck, and the words the customers replaces the word his. In Regulation 103-702.12, the definition for rate, and that's over on page 5. You'll see where reference to Regulation 103-712, which covers the substance of rate applications filed with Commission, those numbers are struck, and it's replaced by the number 103-823. If you may recall, those are the Commission's practice and procedure regulations and cover applications that are filed with the Commission. Under Regulations 103-702.17 contains a new definition for local office or business office. 103-702.18 contains a new definition for the word mail. I think that completes the substance of the proposed changes, Madam Chair. And I didn't know if you wanted to proceed like you have before with asking the participants if they have comments or questions before I proceed?
I'll look at the parties. Would y'all prefer that we do this as we go along, or Mr. Torini, you have some comments, do you not?
Yes, but they only pertain to, I believe it's 735. So, and I don't know if anyone else has, but I might suggest that you just let us
Comment as
chime
we
in
go?
if we have a comment
Okay.
rather than asking after every reg.
With
Yes.
regard to amendments to definition section 103-702, I have a comment on that I would like to propose that we include the definition of municipality. You may recall that I brought this up previously when we did the sewer regs, and it was requesting that we add the same definition of municipality that appears in the gas regs is already approved in the gas regs. And I've given the commissioners a copy of the definition, and I think Ms. Boyd has provided that to the parties. And I think she's trying to get it up on the Elmo. There we go. So that the definition of municipality would include a city, town, county, township, and any other corporation existing, created, or organized as a governmental unit under the Constitution and laws of this state. And as stated, this is the term that is defined under the gas regulations as well. If there's any comment or objection on that. Hearing none, please go ahead, Ms. Boyd.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're going to proceed now. Thank you, Ms. Purvis, with continuing with the slide deck, okay? 103-710, location of records and reports. You'll notice where the words "be kept within an office located" are struck and are replaced with "be available for inspection." So basically, the change to this regulation, or proposed change, will not require that records that are required to be maintained under the water regulations be kept per se within the state. They just must be available for inspection, which could mean that they could be available electronically.
Any comments on this proposed change? Hearing none, we'll proceed to the next section.
The next section, Madam Chair, is 103-712, data to be filed with the Commission and provided to the Office of Regulatory Staff. You'll notice in section 2.5, authorized utility representative, new language which requires the authorized utility representative form include the email address of the utilities representative. And then you'll also notice where number 4, rate applications, is struck. And that's due to the proposed changes to the 103-823 of the Commission's Practice and Procedure Regulations.
And I would note that I think the Commission's ruled on the 800 series regs. We're just awaiting the final order at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Of course, they have to go to the General Assembly.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
review. Any concerns or issues with the two changes in Reg 103.712? Hearing none, please go ahead, Ms. Boyd.
All right. We'll proceed now to Regulation 103-730, Customer Information. Section F is one of the requirements of the practices of a water utility. And it states that the utility must notify any customer making a complaint pursuant to 103-716 that any complaint that remains unresolved after 7 days, that the utility is under the jurisdiction of the Commission and the customer may notify the ORS of the complaint. And what we've done here is we've struck the language that remains unresolved after 7 days, which is more restrictive. So that's the proposed language, strikes that language, and that's it.
Any issues with regard to striking this language from 103.730F? Hearing none.
Okay. Regulation 103-731, customer deposits. Under little d, under 731,
Dot two? No. Oh, dot.
No,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. Just there's no dots behind
right.
it. Yes, ma'am. So little d, you'll see where we've struck the language, the word his, and replaced it with the word their, THEIR, and then also included where a customer deposit may be required, may be terminated for non-payment or fraudulent use. Under 103-731.2, the new language basically states when a deposit is no longer required by a customer, that the utility can basically relinquish that deposit, and that can be done by sending the deposit to the customer's last known address. And we've added that the return of the deposit may be done by bill insert or by the notice method selected by the utility customer and maintained in the customer's records at the water utility. Let's see if there's anything else under. That's all that's under 103-731.
Vice Chair Powers. You turn your microphone on.
May I ask Ms. Boyd a question?
Certainly.
Ms. Boyd, when I was looking at that, I was kind of wondering, and I know it's always going to be a problem, when they send something to a last known address and the people are gone, what sort of time limits involved with, I mean, are they sending like a paper check?
I think that would probably depend on, I don't know. I don't know how the business is. Now, see, this is what I don't know, Vice Chair Powers. When the utility notifies the customer that a deposit is required, I don't know what their practice is. For example, I know as a state employee, we have the option of direct deposit. I don't know if those arrangements are made when the deposit is received by the utility from the customer. I don't know.
Okay.
I think, may we ask a utility that question perhaps?
Okay.
Well, if the customer doesn't leave an updated address for a return of the deposit, what's the name of that act? This is the Unclaimed Property Act that deposits for utilities would fall under that.
Okay, that's true.
The Unclaimed Property Act.
Yeah, and hopefully to follow up with the Vice Chair's question, hopefully the customer thinks about that too, because I see the notice method selected by the customer, that they think about that, perhaps that they might move depending on the circumstances under which their living conditions. For example, if it's renting, perhaps they won't be there as long as someone who's purchasing a home.
I just figured, there's obviously some of this is just going to fall through the cracks, and I just wondered the time frame.
I think that's a great question, but I don't know what you understand what I mean? What the utilities ask for when they receive the deposit. I would think there probably is something in place, but maybe.
I would ask Blue Granite and Southwest. I think a lot of times the deposit may be applied toward the last bill. Is that correct? And then if there's anything left over.
I'm not sure exactly how we return customer deposits, but I know in some instances, if we owe money to a customer, we'll use a credit on the last bill. Trying to get more information.
I don't think that's on, Mr. Payne. I'm having, there we go.
I'm not positive what our the manner in which we return customer deposits. Believe we use a check, but I know in some instances, if we owe money to a customer, we will use a credit on the bill to take care of that. So could be dependent on like a case-by-case basis.
The ultimate thing is if it can't get returned to the customer, it does fall through or go pursuant to the Unclaimed Property Act, and it's not money that the utility keeps. Is the main thing. Or that's my understanding of the law.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. I'm going to
Thank
proceed.
you.
Yes, sir. Madam Chair, I'm going to proceed if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
All right. We're going to move now to Regulation 103-732, Customer Billing. The first change is changing the word his to and replacing it, or striking the word his and replacing it with the words the customers. And I'm reading the sentence, the first sentence under the title. So the utility shall bill each customer as promptly as possible following the reading of the new language reads the customer's meter. And the some additional language includes rendering a receipt and render a receipt of payment upon request. Also under Regulation 103-732, if you look at the little 732.2 customer bill forms, there's a new section that's added, section L, lowercase l, and it reads the telephone number and email address of the Office of Regulatory Staff must be included on customer bill forms. Also, if you look over under 103-732.7 deferred payment plan, the last reference in reference in that regulation is contains an incorrect citation. It currently reads 103.735.1 and then in parenthesis uppercase H, the letter H. That regulation does not exist. It should just read 103-735.1. And that concludes the proposed changes for 103.7-732.
Any comments or issues with regard to the changes in 103-732? Hearing none, please go ahead, Ms. Boyd.
All right, next you'll recognize this language, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It relates to just some additional comments related to the Office of Regulatory Staff's contact information, email address, and phone number. All right, moving on to Regulation 103-733, adjustment of bills. The first change you'll see is under 103-733.1, faster slow meters. It's a minor change. In little lowercase b, the letter B, you'll see the words PER space CENT. We just corrected that to make that the word percent one word. Then over in 103-733.4, we've added language as to how interest must be calculated if a customer is willfully overcharged, and the interest will be applied in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws, Section 34-31-20, Section A.
Okay. Any comments or concerns regarding the changes to the sections under 103-733? Hearing none, we'll proceed.
All right, moving on to Regulation 103-735.1, procedures for termination of service. Under termination of service, meaning for water service, under Section A, you'll find that the words he, his, and his are struck and replaced with the words the customer, the customers, or the customers again. And that also occurs in Section B, big B, where the word his is struck and the word the customer's service may be disconnected. This regulation requires that the water utility, if it needs to or seeks to terminate a customer service for non-payment of a bill, that the utility provide the customer written notice sent by regular mail to the customer's billing address. And it provides that there are certain times and days of the week that the service may be terminated. That is Monday through Thursday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. We've added language in a new Section C that provides for additional notice, either no more than 2 days prior to termination of service, alternatively no more than 3 business days prior to termination of service, where the utility would make additional contact with the customer either by telephone, by door hanger, or by regular mail. And I think, yes, ma'am, those are the changes in Section C. Section C also states that termination of service may be delayed in case of inclement weather, emergencies, or operational conflicts. Finally, in the proposed section, uppercase D, this proposed language provides the water utility shall provide a copy of the termination notice to any third party that the customer has identified should receive notification of the termination of the customer's service.
Okay.
I think that concludes the proposed changes in Regulation 103-735.1.
Okay. I think Mr. Torini wants to be heard on this section.
I can do it now, or we could let Ms. Boyd conclude her presentation if you
Okay.
like. I think she's just got one more section.
I have two small.
Too small.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll come back to 735.1. And
Chair Belzer,
Commissioner Williams?
I have a very tiny note.
Okay.
It looks like under 735.1A, where, and I don't know that this matters, where you have the first he struck out.
Mm-hmm.
I think the words "the customer" have been added.
Yes,
So-
they have.
Okay.
They're just not underlined.
Right. They have. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, proceed.
Yes, ma'am. And we'll come
103. Yes, ma'am. Regulation 103-738, customer complaints. This regulation just deletes the words "and oral" so that it's less restrictive when the words "and oral" are removed, Madam Chair. So basically it reads, when the ORS has notified the utility that a complaint, actually,
So it could be a telephonic complaint or a
written complaint. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any comments on 103-738 or concerns? Hearing none, let's proceed.
Okay. Regulation 103-750, requirement for good engineering practice. The references to mains, the depth of mains, dead end segmentation of systems, grid system, minimum pipe sizes, all that language has been stricken because basically the agency that's now known as Department of Health and Environmental Control can change these restrictions. And so the second sentence under 103-750, I think is sufficient to cover should DHEC need to change its regulations regarding engineering practices related to mains or any other infrastructure that water utilities construct. The design, I'm reading the second paragraph under uppercase letter A, and that sentence reads, the design and construction of the water plant shall conform to the requirements of the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. And I think that will allow, that will ensure that the commissions, if Department of Health and Environmental Control changes or amends or deletes some of its regulations, that the commission's regulations are consistent and in conformance with the Department of Health and Environmental Control's regulations.
We don't need any regulations that could be inconsistent with what DHEC requires. Is that the purpose?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, concerns, issues regarding the change or the proposed change for 103-750?
Chair Belzer,
Commissioner Williams?
thank you. Director Boyd, do we need to put in the alternative language that we're using now for DHEC?
So I think the commission can consider that when it makes its decision. I think there was some language from the Article 8 Practice and Procedure where you had some language
Right.
that, because DHEC still exists right now.
Right, right.
But I think that the commission can make that order that this language be amended, basically, to conform with what you did for the Article 8 regulations.
So the timing would be whenever we make the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, that's because of recent legislation which is reforming DHEC. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that the regulation when it goes to the General Assembly will hopefully be the name of the new entity that will be controlling. Is that correct?
Well, my reading of the legislation that was signed by Governor McMaster is a name change will not occur until next July.
Yeah.
So
that's the problem.
DHEC, as far my reading is DHEC is still in existence
DHEC.
right now and will be until June 30th of next year.
Well, and should the regulations go through, I think there's a provision where you can ask for changes that are ministerial
Yes, ma'am.
based on changes of law under the APA. So,
I think we can do that, and I think the code commissioner probably has the authority to
Yeah.
do certain things too.
so
Legislative Council Code Commissioner.
thank you.
Okay.
And we'll go forward.
Yes, ma'am. Regulation 103-752. I'm almost there, Madam Chair. I promise it won't be much longer.
Oh, I know. I'm following.
The title of this regulation is Acceptable References, and you'll see where we added a semicolon. No, we added a colon. I apologize. A colon after the word practice, and then a semicolon at the end of the phrase ending with the word ameen, A-M-E-E-N, added the word and then added a period at the end of the phrase for section lowercase b, the most current edition of the Manual of Individual Water Systems. So we added the word and just made some punctuation changes in this regulation. And that's it.
Any questions about Regulation 103-752? Hearing none, please proceed.
Okay. Finally, Regulation 103-761 currently reads Commission Inspection and Test. We'd like to change the title of that regulation to replace the word commission with the word or with the acronym ORS, and also in lowercase letter C, make some gender neutral changes in that regulation. From the words his, strike those words and include the words the customers.
Thank you. Any issues or comments or concerns about the proposed changes in 103-761? Hearing none. Does that complete your presentation, Ms. Boyd?
It does, Madam Chair. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you. Let's go back and talk a little more in depth about Regulation 103-735.1. And recognize Mr. Trini. You want to go first? That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
The good news is I don't think this is nearly as complicated as the sewer reg was. You have in the present regulation 103-735-1A states that after a utility has made a reasonable attempt to effect collection and has given the customer written notice sent by regular mail to the customer's billing address, that the customer has 10 days in which to make settlement of the customer's account or the customer service will be disconnected. So that's where we are now. There's a 10-day window, and the Commission's staff's proposed addition in C would basically take within that 10-day window, I mean, it could be after it, but it could also be within, potentially, a second notice that would either be given 2 business days before the disconnection or by telephone or in person, or 3 business days by mail. So potentially you've got a 10-day window in which two notices are mailed to the customer. And that doesn't seem optimal to us for the same reasons we had some issues with the sewer disconnections. Instead, if we've gotten to the point where we're having to disconnect this customer's water, we would propose that the Commission adopt the same resolution we had for sewer, which is when the disconnection is made, allow the utility to give written notice at the premises with a notice such as a door hanger. And I say such as a door hanger because we actually have a utility, Kiowa, that when they give the written notice, they put it in a sealed envelope. They don't put a door hanger on it. Some utilities use door hangers, so that could be efficient, but we wanted to preserve that flexibility. As long as a written notice is put on the door, it tells the customer, hey, this is what you need to do to get your service restored. And you can call this number, you can make arrangements with the utility for a payment plan or whatever you need. Now, I circulated this proposal to ORS yesterday, and it's on me that it was so late, but they suggested adding contact information for ORS on that notice, which the utility does not object to, and I'll let Mr. Knowles speak to that. But we would like the opportunity to talk to ORS maybe about format or, how to work it out so the notice is not confusing, but we don't have a problem with that. So in short, that's our proposal, is to take, see if I can look, to add this language in lieu of C, which would say, upon termination of service, the water utility shall deliver a final written notice, such as a door hanger at the customer's premises. The notice shall notify him or her that the service has been disconnected and shall provide contact information for the utility and instructions for reestablishing service. And then finally, the water utility shall maintain records of the efforts made to contact the customers. Now, this is happening, this is the very last step. It's after we've made collection efforts, they've been unsuccessful, we've given the disconnection notice, and now we're telling you how to get hooked back up. So that's the utility's proposal. Southwest does not have many water disconnections, but we feel like this would be a better method, in short, for when we have to do it. Glad to answer any questions. Or
Mr. Trini, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if this is appropriate for you or Ms. Morris. I'm not trying to put her on the spot. But could you just maybe, if possible, tell us a little bit about efforts that have preceded getting to the point of actually having to disconnect the notice? Disconnect service.
I have the Columbia utilities don't provide water service, so
Correct.
This is mostly on the coast, and I'm glad to have Ms. Morris speak to this, and she could maybe speak to the sewer part, but I've been corresponding with Becky Dennis, and
and if you can't today,
Yeah.
perhaps in written comments, because we do hold the
Ms. Dennis tells me
proceeding
that I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to
I
interrupt.
apologize for interrupting. If you have
We-
it here, or if you need to provide
Yeah.
it in written comment.
Well, we will follow up, but I can tell you what's been relayed to me, which is they send certified letters, they make follow-up phone calls, and they knock on the door to give an extra opportunity for the customer to pay before disconnection is done.
Well, and that knock on the door is not required by the regulations, but that's just something that your clients do. Is that correct?
Correct. But I
Okay.
think that would fall into the reasonable efforts to
Right.
collect
Okay.
that is in the regulation. So it's not like your account's past due, this notice goes off. And we'll be glad to document that for the commission.
Well, and I think what I was kind of going, it's not that disconnection notices are not going out because somebody has missed a payment,
No, ma'am.
that they're late one time. Is that?
That was nice.
Disconnection notices are not going out because of a late payment, a single late.
No, ma'am,
Okay.
they're not. And as was mentioned in the hearing on sewer, one of the problems is when the account keeps getting more and more delinquent, late fees keep piling on, and the customer's not doing anything about it. That's when things get out of control. So, we don't, at some point, disconnection is what makes the customer deal with a bad situation.
And, okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. And any follow-up y'all may want to give us, and I'll make that offer to Blue Granite as well. I'll follow up on that.
We'll
I
be
think
happy
that's
to
a
do
good
that.
learning experience for all of us here on the commission.
Nakia, do you have anything to add, or? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Thomas?
One very minor comment. The verbiage that you put up on the screen and somewhere in about the middle, it referred to, I think, him or her, and everything's been changing to the customer.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good change.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We will mark your exhibit that you've placed on the screen as hearing exhibit number 3 and receive it into the evidence of this proceeding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torini. Any other comments with regard to Regulation 103.735.1? Mr. Traylor,
Madam Chair, we're in agreement with Southwest proposal.
in agreement with Southwest proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, ORS is as well. Mr. Turini had alluded to adding a reference to the written notice, including the contact information for the Office of Regulatory Staff. ORS does support that. And then this is just minor and ministerial, but in the first sentence proposed by Mr. Turini, it says, shall deliver a final written notice. ORS would like to add comma, such as a door hanger, comma, at the customer's premises, just to specify that the written notice is provided physically to the premises.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knowles. And I think we can count on Mr. Torini to file some written comments in the period following this hearing. And
Yes, ma'am. And Madam Chair, if I may, following up on Commissioner Powers' question, we looked into the deposit issue. I can report the Southwest Water Utilities don't take deposits. So
Okay.
we have nothing to add.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Trawick.
we also have some follow-up on Vice Chair Powers' question.
Okay. Are we through with this issue on procedures for termination of service in 735? Are we through with that issue?
From our perspective, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. Mr. Trawick, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll let Mr. Payne speak on this.
Mr.
topic.
Payne?
So regarding customer deposits, if we need to make a return, ideally what we try to do, assuming there's a balance on a bill left, would be to do a bill credit rather than an actual check or anything of that manner. To the extent there's no balance to apply a credit to, then we would issue a check to the address on file.
Well, and I doubt there's rarely a case where the water company's getting some sort of unjust enrichment where people just walk away and leave money without owing some sort of bill.
Yeah, I mean, with different customers, you'd be surprised some of the things that will pop from time to time. But for the most part, like I say, if there is a balance left, or if there's a balance that is not as large as the credit, then we would credit to the extent the balance exists, and then any remainder would be sent via check.
And if there was a balance, how would that be reflected? Not necessarily a rate case, but on paper, how would that be listed if y'all ended up with some extra money?
Well, we keep records of every customer, so even once a customer were to move, for example, we would still have a record of any balances owed either way, and we would make our efforts to get that money back to the customer if it's owed to them, based on whatever information we have available to get a hold of them, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like just example off the top of my head, like a death or something, and no heirs, no will.
I'm not that specifically familiar in such a situation who that money would go to, but ultimately we would maintain the record that the money is owed, and should somebody come that could lay a claim to it, I would imagine they would qualify for it. Otherwise, I guess I'm not really sure where that would end up going.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thomas?
You had mentioned earlier the unclaimed property laws, and I agree that that's what would apply to that situation, and it should remain as a liability on the books, and then at whatever point in time that is, I think it's 7 years, then that money has to go to the state, and then the customer can, or whoever the rightful person is, heir, can go to the state to get the money. That's my understanding how it works.
That's correct. After a certain period of time, the money does escheat to the state, and that's why I don't know if it's the treasurer's office or the comptroller general's office has that list. You can go out there and search on your name, and then make application to get returns of any monies that they have on file. The procedure is set forth, and I'm not sure if is it Unclaimed Property Act or Abandoned Property Act that it's referred to, but there is that procedure, and I agree with you that applies. Anything further, Commissioner Thomas?
No, nothing further. It is kind of interesting to go look at that list from time to time, though. Never know what you might find.
That's true. I've
the
been
treasure
pleasantly
map, Chair.
surprised. Commissioner Carolee Williams, I thought I saw your light. Okay, nothing. Anything further from commissioners? Anything further from any of the participants? I'd like to thank y'all for being here today and for your comments. Ms. Boyd, anything further?
No, ma'am, nothing further. Thank you.
As required by the Administrative Procedures Act, as contained in, I believe, Section 1-23-111B, we will keep the record of this hearing open for 5 working days for any additional comments. I don't think that things will extend beyond that, but should there be unusual difficulties that you need an extension, please feel free to let us know. And with that, if there's nothing further, everybody had a chance to have their say. If there's nothing further, we will close this proceeding, and thank you very much for your comments and your participation. We are adjourned.
Thank you.